It's time for some hostile therapy. All right, welcome to another episode of Hostile Therapy with your host, Big Red. And I have a very, very, very important guest on my show today. Oh yeah, very important. Yeah, I'm gonna drag this up now. He's a suicide prevention public speaker and trainer, a former writer of the popular Tonight Show, something I've watched since I was a kid for over 20 years, corporate comedian. He's also co-author of the book Guts, Grit, and the Grind, along with Sally Spencer Thomas and Sarah Gayer. You can find his TED Talk, A Matter of Life or Death, on FrankTedTalk.com. Frank King, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. I have 6 TED Talks, by the way.
6? Damn.
That is correct. All on mental health, one aspect or another.
Mm-hmm. That was a mouthful to say. I actually couldn't fit everything I wanted to fit on the card. I thought I was going to buy I was going to buy an extra notebook just to fit all the accolades you had up here. So
yeah, well, I'm 65. I've lived a long life, and I've been 34 and a half years in comedy. So
34 and a half years
full time.
And what got you into comedy? What
4th grade.
4th grade. Okay, all right. I feel like there's an interesting story behind it. So.
Yeah, told my first joke in 4th grade.
Okay.
Kids laughed. Teacher was hysterical, so much so she had to excuse herself to go to the teacher's lounge. That's how tore up she was.
Wow. Can you tell that joke now?
It was actually she set it up inadvertently. I was supposed to be wearing glasses. This is 1965, 4, and back then there were no fashion frames. Guys had the black plastic, very popular now, Ray-Ban Buddy Holly looking things.
Right.
Girls had cat-eye glasses in a couple of colors. So I hated them. I was vain then. I'm vain now. I didn't want to wear them, but I couldn't see the board. My entire family is extremely nearsighted.
Right.
And my joke is that we are descended from people who lived on the island of myopia, which was conquered over and over because they never saw the bad guys coming. So I didn't want to wear them, but my teacher and I both knew I couldn't see the board. So she thought, well, he probably didn't want to put them on because the kids are going to make fun of him, 4 eyes. So her idea, and it wasn't a bad one.
Right.
Get me to the front of the room, have me turn away from the class, put the glasses on, turn me back to the class, pull the Band-Aid off, let everybody see Frank's new glasses at the same time. So she does that. She puts them on me. She turns me back to the class, and she looks down at me and she goes, see, you look intelligent. And I looked up at her and said, yes, that would explain all the laughter. And that's when she got hysterical at that joke. And I thought to myself, I'm going to be a stand-up comedian. And then 12th grade, they had a talent show.
Right.
Nobody had ever done stand-up. This is 1975, spring of. Nobody had ever done stand-up at the talent show. And I won. I went home and told my mama, I'm going to be a stand-up comedian. And she said, well, you're going to college first. I don't care what you do when you get done. You can be a goat herder for all I care, but you are going to be a goat herder with a college degree. So I went to Carolina, got a couple of degrees, and then moved to San Diego with the company I was working for.
Okay.
And in San Diego, there's a branch of the Comedy Store, the world famous Comedy Store up on Sunset, and they had open mic night, and that was that. I got up on open mic night. I'm halfway through my 5 minutes. They're laughing. Inside my head, I heard this: "You're home." Second thought was, I'm going to do this for a living. Of course, I had no idea how, and had I known how hard it was, I might not have tried, but I was all in. So,
okay. What were, do you think, who your biggest influences as far as comedy?
I grew up with Pryor, Carlin, Cosby, Cheech and Chong.
Cheech and Chong.
And I'm a middle class white kid from the burbs. Back then, I had no idea what they were talking about. Weed, marijuana, They're very popular with my peers, and we all memorized all the bits. And Robert Klein a little bit. Michael Keaton, as I was getting into my teens, because he's about 5 years older than I am. He was the
Batman guy.
Beg pardon?
The Batman guy.
That one. That's the one.
Yeah.
Batman, Birdman.
I never found out that he was a comedian until probably 2 years ago.
Yeah, he
And
did the Tonight Show.
yeah, but he did he go under Michael Keaton or did he have a different name?
No, he went under Michael Keaton.
Okay.
Yeah, he did the Tonight Show, and then he did Mr. Mom, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And he's done a ton of movies since, obviously.
All right.
He's got one on either Prime or Netflix about the opioid crisis, and another one about where he plays an attorney on 9/11 compensating the victim. I mean, he's amazing career.
Yeah, one of my favorite actors.
Yeah, and there's a movie called Night Shift with Henry Winkler where he plays Billy Blazejowski. Billy Blaze, who's a morgue attendant.
Mm-hmm.
And Henry Winkler comes to work at the morgue, and or Blazejowski must come to work at the morgue, and they become pimps, or as Michael Keaton says in the movie, we're love brokers. So it was a great comedy. Anyway, yeah, I'm a big fan. So he was a big influence on me.
Wow. Okay. I gotta see if I can actually find some stuff of him, Michael Keaton, because I never knew that he actually did. I mean, it makes sense, since Beetlejuice and something, Mr. Mom, and some of the other stuff he's done, because he's naturally funny. But I never knew he did comedy like that.
Yep, just stand up, and I don't know how I did the Tonight Show stand up at least once. I remember seeing him on there.
Okay. Did you do stand up on the Tonight Show a couple times?
I was turned down a dozen times by the Tonight Show, by Letterman, by Conan, 4 times by 4 times by Last Comic Standing, once by America's Got Talent.
Mm-hmm.
I won 2 episodes on the old Star Search with Ed McMahon, and then I lost to a puppet.
Oh, how did that go with the ego with that, to a puppet?
That was difficult to take, but the puppet was good. I would have voted for the puppet.
Right.
But yeah, so it's yeah, comedy. If you don't like rejection, failure, comedy's not your business because you're gonna get way more no's than. That said, I did 2 Showtime shows, Comedy Club Network and Showtime's Comedy on the Road. Did the Improv,
Mm-hmm.
did Star Search, was a guest on Joan Rivers' short-lived daytime talk show.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, I never made it into that last, the top ring of comics who did Letterman, Conan, Ferguson. But
How did you become a writer for the Tonight Show?
when Jay was a permanent guest host
Mm-hmm.
for Johnny would come up on Friday night and tell his staff, I'm taking next week off, which meant Leno was working 4 nights, Tuesday through Friday, because Monday night was Best of Carson, which meant Leno had to have 18 jokes a night times 4 nights. Mm-hmm. So he started hiring road comics under contract, contractors, 1099, to write jokes when Johnny, said, I'm taking a week off. And so I pumped in 2 dozen topical jokes a day. And then when Jay got the Tonight Show for real, he cut loose most of the contract labor and kept some of us on. And I stayed with him until he went to CNBC for his car show.
Right. How was that process? Because, I don't know how far ahead y'all actually recorded the shows, like when they had guests, how far ahead they booked them. But I imagine you had to, if there were stories about, I don't know, the president or something, some kind of crisis that was happening in the news, you had to keep a vigilant eye on the news, see what was happening. And
oh yeah,
how long
I read the New York Times, USA Today every day.
Right.
And if I wrote a joke on Monday, Leno would road test it in the evening at the Comedy Magic Club in Hermosa Beach.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it was good enough, it'd be on Wednesday's show.
Right.
If something didn't change about it. That's the problem with topical material. It can change very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why Seinfeld said he never writes topical jokes, news jokes, because you spend so much time on them, then they're done.
Right.
So.
Well, how did you feel about that, though, where, when you write these jokes, these are your babies pretty much. And I don't think what people understand about comedy versus any other art is when you write a comedy joke, and almost like topical jokes, they're some of them are timeless, but a lot of them are just for the moment. And the thing is about comedy versus like a musical artist, you can't repeat the same thing. Once it becomes, when you go prime time, you can't go to your greatest hits and keep repeating it. You got to constantly be creative for your entire life You can't be like Aerosmith and then go back to those old hits that you did 30 years ago and people are like, yeah, play that
Yeah.
same song again. You can't do the same thing. And comedy to me has to be like the most creative genre out there.
It's
You can't-
it was a great training ground. It was a great training for writing other things.
Right.
And doing 12 to 24 jokes a day was, it's good exercising that muscle. So
Mhm.
if you start the day writing jokes, you're probably going to think funny all day,
Hmm.
and you're going to see things where you go, "Oh wait, yeah, that's a joke right there." And that's why one of the reasons I always wrote in the morning was because it made me think funny all day long, looking for comedy.
Okay. Well, tell me then, because this is crazy how you have mixed up comedy now with being a speaker for suicide prevention.
Mhm.
Tell me your story of what you went through when you were going through suicidal thoughts yourself. What brought you to that point?
Well, depression and suicide run in my family. It's called generational depression and suicide. My
Mhm.
grandmother died by suicide. My mom found her. My great aunt died by suicide. My mom and I found her. I was 4 years old. I'll spare you the details, but I screamed for days. Like horror movie, horrible.
Mm.
And then in 2010, in April, at the height of the recession, we had filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy because speaking in comedy market dropped 80% practically overnight. And we lost everything in a Chapter 7. And that's when I learned what the barrel of my gun tasted like. Spoiler alert, I did not pull the trigger. A friend of mine was watching my keynote, and I mentioned that, and he thought it'd be funny, and he came up afterwards, "Hey man, how come you didn't pull the trigger?" No, "Hey man, could you try to sound slightly less disappointed?" That's where the comedy comes from, but the suicidality runs in the family.
Right.
And I've been a club comic from '84 to '93, and then I did some radio in Raleigh, year and a half on a morning show,
Mhm.
and then when I got ready to go back on the road was disappearing. Comedy clubs were closing. So I thought, well, I got a clean act. I'll do corporate, the rubber chicken circuit after dinner, after lunch. So I did that for about 10 years. Good money because HR will pay a lot of money for a comic, not for the jokes you tell, but for the jokes you don't tell.
Mhm.
Make sure when I get done with my job, the meeting planner still has a job. So I did that for about 10 years. And then the recession hit and, business dropped off and I came close to killing myself. When things eased up, meeting planner said to me, "Frank, we love you. Well, you've got to teach our audience something. We can't just pay you that kind of money for jokes anymore."
Mhm.
And I'd always wanted to be a speaker, a speaker who was funny in addition to being a funny speaker. But I had no idea. So I bought a book by a woman, a friend of mine named Judy Carter, called The Message of You. Turn your life into a money-making speaking career. Pretty specific. And going into it, I thought I got nothing. And she walked you through the steps of figuring out what your heart story is,
Yeah.
Yeah, listing out your messes and stresses and your successes. Anyway, halfway through, I thought, oh man, have I got a story? I could do my mental health story, my lived experience, my family.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, yeah, but with a speech, you got to have some meat to that, some takeaways, action items.
Right.
So I thought if I get some training in suicide prevention. So I've taken several courses in suicide prevention, got another one coming up 1st of December. And so what I do is I tell my story. I tell the audience what I learned in that, those messes and stresses. And then the last part, I teach them signs and symptoms of depression and thoughts of suicide, what to say, what not to say, what to do, what not to do, and how to get resources. And the reason I do that is the good news is 8 out of 10 people who are suicidal are ambivalent, meaning they can't make up their mind. And 9 out of 10 give hints that they're going to kill themselves in the last week leading up to an attempt, which means the vast majority of people want to be saved.
Right.
The trick is you've got to be able to spot the signs of depression and thoughts of suicide because it can be very subtle. And that's what I teach when I do my class. And then I add the humor, pretty dark topic.
Right.
They call it comic relief for a reason.
Right.
So meeting planners will generally rather have me come in because I've got a 1 to 3 hour presentation. It qualifies for continuing education for a lot of professions.
Mm-hmm.
The audience would rather have a comedian talk to them for 3 hours than a clinician, I am sure.
Right.
So that often gets me the job. The fact that I've done stand-up comedy, written stand-up comedy, it's it's not going to be quite so heavy.
Won't bore them to death.
Or boring, yeah, Lord, even more boring.
Poor choice of words on my behalf, but
Yeah. So yeah, that's how I got into speaking. And the thing, comedy's good. Comedy
Hmm.
club money was okay at the time, but the corporate comedy pays like by a factor of 10 for a night of comedy. You're
Hmm.
making $500 as a headliner. You're making 5,000 as a corporate comedian. And then if you add, content on top of that, takeaways, learning stuff, you can
Hmm.
add another 2,500. So my fee's 7,500 with the comedy and the suicide prevention.
Nice, nice. Oh, I'm gonna read off a few stats that I was looking at a couple of days ago, just for the listeners. Now, some of these were, kind of eye popping for me. From 2019, from the CDC, the suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in
Yep.
America. 2019, 47,511 people died from suicide. Now, this is one of the biggest eye popping ones for me. 1.38 million attempted suicide. And then I looked at the number to how many people actually died. From what I saw, I was like, that's like at least 90%, I think.
Yeah. Well, and women
Crazy.
attempt more than men.
Hmm.
Men tend to complete because they use a firearm.
Right, and I think 50% of was suicide attempts was from firearms. I believe if I saw that correct. Yeah,
And
that's
men tend to do that. By the way, 146 people a day, that's one every 9 minutes dies of suicide in the US. That's a fully loaded 737 going into the ground like a lawn dart every day.
mm.
And hardly anybody's talking about it.
Why do you think?
However, if you bring
Why?
it up,
Right.
almost everybody's got a story.
Right. Why do you think that is? I mean, that being now we're thinking about, we're talking about a pandemic, off air before we started. Heart disease, I think, is the number one killer in America and probably throughout the world. This being the 10th leading cause of death, why is this not talked about enough?
I think there's a stigma associated with it, two stigmas. There's a stigma associated with mental illness, another stigma associated with thoughts of suicide.
Hmm.
So people are a little shy about coming forward, and especially men. I
Right.
didn't tell anybody I was depressed and suicidal until I was 52, and I told everybody, I told the world in my TEDx talk, my first one. I came out as depressed and suicidal. Nobody knew. My
Right.
wife, my family, my friends. I mean, they knew I could get down a little every now and then, but I had no idea how bad it was. I have a condition. Depression is one. The other is called chronic suicidal ideation, which
What is
means for me and people like me, suicide is always an option on the menu as a solution for problems large and small.
that? Right.
When I say small, my car broke down a couple of years ago. I had three thoughts unbidden. One,
Hmm.
get it fixed. Two, buy a new. And three, I could just kill myself. That's chronic suicidal ideation. Now, the upside of that story, I tell it every time I speak. Since 2014, there's always been at least one person in the audience. I bet there's somebody listening right now to the podcast
Hmm.
who has chronic suicidal ideation. However, they did not know it had a name. They had no idea it was actually a thing. They
Hmm.
think they're just some kind of freak and all alone. I mean, I had a young woman come up after college show and say, "Thanks for the keynote." You're welcome. She said, "But I got to tell you, it made me weep." How'd it make you weep? She goes, "You know your story about the car, get it fixed, buy a new, and kill yourself?" I go, "Yeah." She goes, "I've been having those thoughts all my life. I thought it was just me. I didn't know it was a thing. When I
Right.
heard you, and I thought I was all alone. And I heard you say that out loud. And I realized for the first time in my life that I am not alone, and I wept. Hello. So
Yeah.
that's the ROI for me. That's the purpose and the passion. It's I believe it's what I meant. Why I didn't pull the trigger, what I was meant to do. Post suicide attempt.
I hear a lot of people actually say the things you just said, though, but a lot of people will take it as, "Oh, they're just kidding. That's a joke or whatever." But I think some people are saying it just say, I want you to intervene and
Yeah.
say, no, it's not that serious or whatever." But they're saying it in a joking way, so they won't go all the way deep in on them, whatever.
Or they say it in such a way that you guys won't have to. If I don't get that promotion, I'm going to kill myself. Well, are they joking?
Right.
Or, pretty soon you guys won't have to worry about me anymore. Well, are they going back to school? Are they moving? Are they changing companies? I mean, so it's, you have to, what you're looking for is patterns,
Hmm.
patterns of behavior, patterns of them being depressed, cycles.
Hmm.
Uh, so that, yeah, if it's just a one-off, somebody who's, normally relatively level-headed, man, if they don't give me that job, I'm gonna kill myself.
Right.
And also, I say, watch their body language and their facial expressions when they say that, because sometimes your body gives you away. My mom used to say when I'd be walking around the house, she'd go, "Why are you so unhappy?" "I'm not unhappy." "Well, you should let your face know that."
Right. Do you think, I'm gonna say yes on this, but do you think men versus women, when it comes to showing risk factors of suicidal thoughts, do you think men hide their card a whole lot better than women?
Yes, one thing, men oftentimes depression presents as anger and irritability,
Mhm.
but men tend not to show the signs, or they try to cover them up.
Right.
That's why 8 out of 10 people who die in the U.S. these days are men. That's why we wrote the books,
Mhm.
Guts, Grit, and the Grind, because there was no men's mental health manual out there. So we thought, well, we can fix it. We can fill that vacuum. So yeah, men, it's called toxic masculinity. Men not showing emotion or revealing certain things. When I was a kid growing up in the South, it was big boys don't cry. Same thing,
Right.
just not so fancy a name. So yeah, men are an endangered species.
I like how what you did with the book though, where you made it relatable to men and related mental maintenance to a
Yeah,
car.
yeah, a lot of car metaphors, a lot of car engine metaphors with the brain,
Mm-hmm.
and it really is a manual, like a car owner's manual. There's all sorts of exercises and resources, but
Mm-hmm.
if men took care of their cars like they take care of their brains, you better buy a bus pass.
Right.
You know, you need to do car maintenance, oil change, top off the fluids, rotate the tires, and your brain's the same way. You need routine maintenance of your brain, and if you put junk gas into a car, sooner or later it's going to run pretty rough. You put junk into your body,
Mm-hmm.
same thing. Over time, eventually it's going to break down. So yeah, there's lots of. My favorite is, ladies, don't you wish men had a mental check engine light?
Mm-hmm.
It pops on, and you got to go see the mental mechanic. So you go in, the guy puts you up on the rack and goes, "Bob, of course you're depressed. Look here, you're 2 quarts low on serotonin." Yeah, men told us they wanted real men with real stories and how they're really coping. So each book is 12 stories, 12 guys, 12 problems, and
Mm-hmm.
how they're actually, coping with it.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, because you said you have a family history of depression. Is depression kind of like alcoholism, where people who suffer from alcoholism, they deal with it for the rest of their life?
Yeah.
They can get better from it, but I think some people think of depression like they'll go to a psychiatrist or take some sort of medicine and then they'll feel all right. Is this a continuing thing that you have to fight against for the rest of your life?
Oh,
Or
yeah. In my case, because it's in my DNA. And although I don't say I fight it anymore, because fight implies I can win, and I can't.
okay,
I
right.
live with depression, is what I say.
Maintenance, I guess you would say, right?
Yeah, and I take medication. I have a self-care plan: diet, exercise, good night's sleep, meditation, medication.
Hmm.
But however, that said, because of the pandemic, there were a lot of people who were what they call situationally depressed. Never been depressed before,
Hmm.
but they were depressed because of the upheaval and all the the baggage that came with the pandemic.
Right.
And so for them, it's probably going to be short term. I recommend have a mental health checkup if you're truly situationally depressed. Take a med only as long as you need to, because chances are, as things ease up with the pandemic, pressure comes off, lives return to whatever the new normal is, and you'll probably just be able to taper off the medication and maybe never take it again.
Right.
So for people like that, for normal people, neurotypicals, I think it's possible to get past that.
Is there anything in particular you focus on that brings you back out of depression? I mean, I know you take medication for it, but
Yep.
do you think you focus like, all right, this makes me happy. It's not so bad because this is happening in my life, so I feel good.
No, it's more of a routine maintenance every day. Like I said, diet. I'm on the keto diet, and I intermittent fast. I only eat one meal a day. I'm at the gym this morning, exercise. I get a good night's sleep, restorative. Meditation. There's a It's called a catnapper. It's 29 minutes. It's a guided meditation, takes you down, brings you back up the other end. Do that twice a day, usually following a meal.
Oh, I love those.
Oh yeah, the whole family now. And then medication. I take a small amount of antidepressant. Now, here's the thing. With antidepressants or any other psychotropic, 1/3 of the people who take them love them. Can't get enough of them. 1/3 of the people, it's okay. And the other third is like, oh man, I got to get off this. It's horrible. So only 1/3 of the people are really happy with their meds. Mm-hmm. So what I advise is, and I would have done this if it hadn't worked so well for me, you can get a DNA cheek swab like Ancestry.
Right.
And they take your DNA and they match it with the antidepressant they think works best with your metabolism. Mm-hmm. So you get a lot less of that. Go on, doesn't work, taper off. Go on, doesn't work, taper off. And it's a couple $100. Most insurances cover it. And it's just, you can dial in. It's not perfect yet, but it's more precise than just, whatever the drug company rep told the physician this pill was good for. Mm-hmm. It's a little more personalized.
Okay.
So that's what works for me is not so much a happy thought, but a self-care plan that I practice every day. And there's another technique called gamification that I use.
Right.
So let's say I can't get out of bed in the morning. I'm struggling to get out of bed. Mm-hmm. I make a to-do list, 6 things. And the game is, as soon as I scratch off number 6, I get to go back to bed. I don't care if it's 3 p.m, broad daylight, and binge watch clickbait on Netflix or whatever I had to be binge watching at the time. It's called gamification.
Okay.
The third leg of my safe self-care plan is routine. Mm-hmm. I go to bed about the same time, get up about the same time, eat about the same time, exercise. I mean, there was a guy in space, in the space, station.
Right.
There for a year, all by himself, except when they brought groceries up. And they said, how do you survive that kind of social isolation? He goes, I've got a routine. I go to bed same time, get up same time. I thought, there it is. There's the third leg of my. So it's a constant routine maintenance. Mm-hmm. And because I'm 65, I've been through my cycle many times. My cycle lasts about 3 days. Some people with major depressive disorder can last up to 3 weeks. Mine's 3 days. So I know when I begin to cycle down, 72 hours later, I'm going to be flying level again. Mm-hmm. So I just ride it out. I just jump on and ride it out. No, but the problem is younger people who've never been through that as many times as I have and understand there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. Mm-hmm. People with depression tend to live in the immediate. And they're thinking, if it's never going to be any better than this, why bother? That's a very dangerous thought. Right. But I've been through it multiple times.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Someone's calling.
Yeah, hang on 1 second. Let me. Oh, it's my handyman. Hang on 1 second.
Okay. I thought it was
Paul. Sorry about that. Okay, hang on.
That's cool.
Hello? Yes, Paul? Absolutely. Yes, the 1 dog is in the house with me, 2 dogs in the backyard, and the gate is locked, the back gate of the cabana. Yeah, that you won't have to deal with the dogs. No, you won't be breakfast. No. Thanks, Bob. All right, Big Red. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, it's cool. It's cool, man. Let's see. What was I going? Okay. What I was going to ask was, if you notice somebody is going through depression, I mean, I don't know if it's a one-way fix-all type thing. How do you stage an intervention for that person to say you need to go get help? Because especially if you come to some guys, they're probably going to be fine. I'm not sad. I'm not depressed. I'm a man. What are you talking about? I don't experience that type of stuff. What are you talking about? Get away from me.
And in certain communities, it's worse.
Right.
African Americans, Alaskan Americans, Native Americans, Hispanics, because culturally, just overall,
that doesn't exist.
They don't really talk about it to friends and family because for cultural, norms. Mm-hmm. And so for men, bad. For those groups of men, worse. So what you're looking for again is a pattern. Let's say you say, Frank, you look depressed. Are you depressed? I go, yeah. Then your next question would be, are you having thoughts of suicide? And I go, yeah. and your next question would be, do you have a plan? And I go, yeah, I got 3 plans. And then you would say, what is your plan?
Mm-hmm.
And if my plan is detailed, time, place, method, you need to get me on the phone with the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, or you need to call them, and the volunteer will tell you what they think you should do at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Try to talk the phone into the hand of the person who's suicidal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say you say, Frank, you depressed? Yeah. Haven't thought suicide? Nah. How would you know? Well, here's some symptoms, top symptoms, 5 or 6 of thoughts of suicide. Talking about death and dying, Googling death and dying. Death and dying appears as a theme in their artwork, their music, could be the music they listen to, or the music they're creating, they're writing, getting their affairs in order, giving prized possessions away, because they want to make sure they go to the person they want them to go to when they're gone. And here's the top of that pyramid. If they give away a pet, that's a really dangerous sign. Really? Acquiring the means, either buying a firearm or stockpiling medication. Here's a counterintuitive one. You and I have talked about this already. What are you to make of this next sentence? This next thing. They've been depressed for a long time, and then they're happy beyond measure for no apparent reason. And you're happy because, thank God, they're finally happy.
Right.
Trouble is, they may be happy because they've chosen time, place, and method. And suicide most often isn't about killing yourself. It's about ending the pain.
Right.
So if they've chosen time, place, and method, then they know the pain is going to stop.
That's why they're happy.
That's why it's so dangerous. Now, let's say I've got a plan, but it's not really detailed. What would I want you to say to me? Well, I would want you to say to me, well, Frank, are you going to kill yourself? And if I say no, then you say, okay, then tell me why not. Make them give voice to whatever's keeping them here. My friends, my family, my animals, whatever it is, make them give voice to it. Now, if they're an immediate danger to themselves or others, got no choice but to call 911. That said, if the cops come and they find them actively suicidal, they'll take them in front of a judge and try to get a 3-day, 72-hour involuntary detention order and lock them down for 3 days, which means they're probably going to unfriend you on Facebook for doing that, but they'll be alive. So that's kind of the protocol.
Right.
And that's what I teach. Because once I teach people that, it was cute because it has a happy ending. I had a dentist. I was at a function. And he said, Frank, I saw you speak a year ago. And I really, enjoyed it. And I was paying attention. And I got to tell you, there's another guy there in that same group of dentists with me whose friend lives around the corner from me. So I'm on Facebook and I'm giving all kinds of stuff away because my wife and I are downsizing from a 4,000 square foot home to 1,250 ranch style, whatever. Well, one of the things you said in your talk was giving away prized possession is a sign you may be suicidal. So my friend who was sitting next to me at your talk calls me up. He goes, man, you okay? Why would I not be okay? You're giving away prized possessions. Frank said giving away prized possessions. He goes, no, man, I'm downsizing. But the important part of that story is his friend spotted something I taught him, worried about it, stepped out of his comfort zone, asked another guy if he's okay. So that's the power of starting the conversation.
And, it's funny you mentioned about Facebook, and I'm going to touch on that for a minute. And this is a little bit outside of our generation, but, the newer generation with social media, they are so entrenched in what opinions are being taken on to Facebook or Twitter or whatever. And I've heard enough people commit suicide off of that from, I guess, cyberbullying, if you want to call it that. Is there any advice you would give to parents, to children who are too entrenched into social media?
Well, a couple of things. One is some of the suicides are not related to cyberbullying. I think in those internal documents from Facebook that were released, they have studies, I believe, internal studies that show that 13% of young women have suicidal thoughts. They attribute to Instagram because of body issues,
right?
Self-image, body issues. So some of it's bullying, some of it's. I think there's an app, there's a function on most smartphones that tells you how much time you spent online this week.
Yeah.
I think just look at that and decide sit down have the folks sit down with the kids and look at it and go, well, now, is that too much? Is that too little? Is that the right amount? And then set an amount of time to be on social media. I believe that there should be, social media / internet free periods. Put a power strip in the parents' bedroom. All the devices go into it at night at a certain hour, and none of the devices, including the parents' devices, iPhones or whatever, get unplugged until a stated time the next morning.
You're gonna have some fishing parents and teenagers.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough pull, and maybe have a whole day or a weekend, a wireless weekend, or no wired weekend or whatever, where you plug them in, you don't touch them for a weekend. I think because social media, it's a tool. It can be used for good or evil.
Right.
And too many times, unfortunately, it's part of the problem is they did a study, 2012 to now. The young women and teenagers, young female teenagers now spend about 40% less time, face-to-face time than they did with their peers in 2012, meaning at the movies, the mall.
Right.
That 40%, of course, has been eaten up by time staring into the screen from their bedroom. So there's less human. Down. Yeah. So we're more connected, but less connected face-to-face than a human interaction. There is no app for that. You got to be face-to-face.
Right. And you know what? That went up exponentially last year.
Yes. Everybody had to begin to live their lives online.
Right.
Zooms and StreamYards, and everybody's locked in. So you're on social media, talking to your friends, posting. Yep. I would not want to be a parent at this point. I wouldn't want to be a kid in high school either. They got cyberbullied. I got cyberbullied over something a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea how bad it was. I thought, how could you cyberbully somebody? Because when I was a kid, you got punched in the shoulder in the locker room or snapped with a towel, and you went home, you left the bully behind. Well, nowadays the kid takes the bully home in their pocket.
Right. You had a local bullies, but now you got worldwide bullies now.
Yeah, and everybody in your class, everybody in your school knows whatever is happening, and I would be angling my folks for homeschool. I'm like, look, I can't take it.
Right. But so, you would say the easy solution would be just turn it off. It's almost like, well, you're taking away the cool aspect of being a teenager is being on social media and communicating through everybody in the world, even though it seems like most teenagers don't understand that they are actually talking to the world when they make these racy TikToks or whatever that, they don't think anybody but their friends are going to watch. And then they find out they're in trouble for something they did and now it's gone viral. I don't understand how this generation doesn't get that, but.
Yes, and employers.
Yeah, that too.
My clients go look at my Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. They go looking to see how I behave myself, my personal Facebook. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but I don't think they should allow smartphones in schools. I think they should go in the locker.
I agree.
Yeah, and somebody pushed back on me on that. They said, well, what if there's an emergency and your parent has to get hold of you? Or what if somebody is an active shooter on campus? Well, here's the deal.
How rare is that, though? That means that somebody's actually going to go to a school and shoot up a school.
Well, in this country, more often than we certainly would hope. But let's say it's not. I said, well, have they removed all the PA systems from all the schools in the country? Because when I was a kid, we had morning announcements, afternoon.
Yeah.
And if your parents need to get hold of you, and I was a kid, they're young people working in the office.
Yeah,
that's part of their day at school, and they would bring a note down to your class, and you would go to the office, and you would talk to. It's not like you have to have instant communication. If there's an active shooter, just sound the alarm. Lock down the doors.
Yeah.
So it's I think school should be a phone-free zone.
Yeah, I agree. Well, the teachers could have phones. I would think, or something like that. Shoot.
Yeah, absolutely. And lead by example.
Yeah.
Because parents. You've seen parents in restaurants. Both parents are on the phone. All the kids are on the phone. A friend of mine who treats has a camp for kids who are having difficulties, behavior problems.
Mm-hmm.
They don't allow phones. Well, they don't allow phones at all.
Mm-hmm.
For the entire time you're there. But they also would not allow phones at dinner.
Mm-hmm.
My friend says the TV tray built the coffin for the family dinner, and
Right.
the smartphone put the last nails in it.
You're right. No one sits at the table anymore.
Yeah, nobody talks. But when I was a kid, TV trays, TV dinners, that was a big deal.
Right.
Yeah, and so now the smartphone, everybody got to face a smartphone, so it's a tool like anything else. It can be used for good, used for bad.
Like a hammer.
Yep, exactly. So I don't do a lot on Facebook. I'm not a big fan, or Meta.
Oh yeah. They've changed the name of that now. People haven't found out just then. Facebook is about to drop their name to Meta.
Yep, and so I've got a personal page and a business page, or two business pages actually.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't do any marketing on there. I'm a LinkedIn guy because that's business to business.
Right.
And that's pretty much. And I'm going to do TikTok because I was at a conference and somebody said to me, Frank, why are you not on TikTok? You're a comic. You can say things in 15, 14 seconds. I mean, the people find it funny and informative, and so I'm probably going to do TikTok with mental health tips and getting TEDx tips. 13, 14 seconds, funny. And same with Instagram, a little longer.
Well, you got to dance on there too. If it's TikTok, you got to dance or something.
Yeah, and dance topless. So
while you're doing topless, you got to dance.
So anyway, I don't have a lot to do with Facebook. I just, I think it's peaked, and it's on its way. There's a saturation point, and I think it's peaked. Maybe why they're changing the name.
Hopefully for the good.
Let's hope.
Break off into pieces, but then they'll form other social medias or whatever off of that. But let me get back to an earlier point. Guns in the home. There's a lot of gun owners in the home.
More guns in the U.S. than people.
That is true. Probably more illegal than legal too. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If you had the illegal ones, dear God.
All right. But I guess if you got people living in the house that are speaking in suicidal terms or whatever, do you call the police on if you hear somebody is talking like they want to do harm to themselves? Do you call the police immediately, or do you talk to that person and see if you can talk? Talking. I'm not even talking about the ones that just saying that I'm going to off myself this week. I'm going to kill myself this week or next week or tomorrow or whatever. There's somebody talking depressed, and they have a gun in the home. What do you do about that situation?
Well, if they're depressed and you ask them, are you having thoughts of suicide? Yes, and they have a plan and it's detailed. Then what you do is you call the police and simply say, would you please go by and do a welfare check?
Mm-hmm.
And then let the policeman ask the questions. And if they believe the person is actively suicidal, again, they'll take them away put them in front of a judge and try to get the 3-day involuntary detention order. Mm-hmm. So again, they're probably going to unfriend you on Meta, and but they're going to be alive. So that's what I tell people when they ask me after a show. My friend's like 1,000 miles from here. We were high school, college friends, and I'm reading his Facebook, timeline feed, and there's some dangerous stuff in there. I'm really worried. And when I talk to him, same thing. I say, look, if you are that worried, if you have their physical address, just call the cops and ask them to go by and do a welfare check.
Okay, so you've told me a few stories of how you've talked to people after your shows, and they've told you how your keynotes have helped them in their life. And I'm sure you probably have sat and had conversations about how someone's felt, and they've been depressed and they thought about killing themselves, and you giving them advice. I'm gonna ask you the same question I ask other psychiatrists who do this for a living as well, and they have to hear stories about this all day. How do you absorb all that to the point where it doesn't bring you down?
And
put you in a state of depression even worse than how they're feeling. So that's a lot of negative energy coming your way. Even though some of them are probably giving you some success stories, that's still a lot of stuff, a lot of feelings to absorb all day long. So how do you translate into positivity to where you're coming out smelling like roses.
Yeah, fortunately, I don't have to listen to it all day long. Not being a clinician. Brene Brown said in her book on vulnerability
Mm-hmm.
about her mental illness, and I've said this not quite so eloquently, but I've said this many times to my audience, is look, I'm so comfortable in my darkness, I can sit comfortably with you in yours. So it would, things that would frighten the normal person or they would miss. Like I was talking to a guy the other day, he called up, he was depressed, suicidal. In passing, he said, yeah, I picked up an Amtrak schedule. Well, what a neurotypical person may hear is the guy's going on a train trip. What I heard was he's about to step in front of a train. So I said, look, I'm not going to ask you not to kill yourself. That's not my style. I am going to ask you, please don't do it that way, because the moment you step on the tracks and right before you get hit, you're probably going to lock eyes with the engineer who can do absolutely nothing to stop it. And you're going to take your own life and ruin theirs. So, and if they're suicidal and it's not involving a trainer, go, look, I'm not going to ask you not to kill yourself. What I'm going to ask you is, before you do, call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, because I would have difficulty, make it a favor to me. I would have difficulty living with myself if I knew my voice was the last one you heard.
Right.
It's a bit of a trick in that they're doing a favor for me. A lot of times people who have mental illness are good at helping other people, not so much themselves. No, and so I find all that therapeutic. And it's, my depression is generally not situational. It's not, I mean, it can be, but I've been most depressed and suicidal at some of the best times in my life. So talking to these people is not triggering me to get depressed or more depressed or suicidal and it makes me feel good to maybe perhaps help them out.
Okay. All right. Good answer. Good answer. Okay. So I looked at, on your site or whatever, and talking about how you talk with, certain companies, employers, and how you convince them that talking about suicide prevention is very helpful for them employees. What would be a selling point if you need to go talk to somebody, a certain employer that didn't understand why they need to invest in their employees as far as mental health? How would you sell them on that?
Well,
I don't think most of them, think of it as a morality point to worry about. I feel like some of the stuff I looked at, I was like, if you have more productive employees, then you'll get more production and you'll make more money. That's how I look at it. But how do you sell them on that?
Well, that is true. Although many employers put more emphasis on physical health than mental health.
Right.
Not understanding that I think the average employee in the U.S. costs the average company about $15,000 a year in mental health costs if you average it out over everybody. I was very careful, and I coach my clients, my speaking clients, to be very careful to select your ideal audience, your ideal client. So I looked at the top 10 at-risk occupations for suicide, and I've chosen 6 of them to target market. Because they all have a high rate of suicide. And in the case of those 6 industries, they're working really hard to bring it down. So I don't have to sell those guys on the idea of talking about it. Because I tell my speakers, look, you need to find the pain point. And then your keynote or your training needs to help solve that problem. If you're not addressing a pain point and a problem, why would they hire you to do a keynote or a training? Because right. If they don't have, or as you pointed out, or they don't understand that that's part of their responsibility and how bad the problem is. I just broke into agriculture, which is the number 5 or 6 at-risk occupations, farmers, for suicide. Now, bear in mind, I started pitching them in 2014. I didn't get my first gig in ag until 2021, 7 years later, because I would call up and they were offended that I even mentioned it. And I'm like, you're number 5 or 6 on the list of at-risk. They didn't want to hear it. Suddenly, in June of this year, did my first one. I got one next week for the Farm Bureau in Billings, Montana. I mean, all of a sudden, agriculture has tumbled to the fact we need to do something about this suicide rate among farmers. So that's how I don't have to sell, really. if they understand they have a problem, I have a solution for it.
Okay. Who would they put in charge in the workplace to monitor those behaviors that somebody may be at a at-risk behavior for depression?
I would say HR, and then if they have a safety manager,
Mm-hmm.
and make mental health part of the safety protocol.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you go to a lot of industries where they've got a sign hanging on the wall: 0 accidents this year, or with trucks and things, 0 accidents. You need, I think, to include mental health in with the physical accidents. But here's where they will spend their money: on active shooter drills. And I said to a group of 1,000 safety managers, I got bad news for you guys and gals. Shooter drills, active shooter drills, is not prevention. No.
Right.
You're just trying to keep the body count down.
I was just about to say that. Right.
Yeah. I said, you need to go upriver. They call it upstream in mental health. You're way downstream. You need to go all the way upstream. There's an old saying, I can't remember which culture said this, but if you're pulling dead bodies out of a river, you need to stop doing that and go upriver and find out how they're getting in there.
Right.
So I said, look, what you should do if you want to prevent active shooters, because a lot of times it's somebody with a grudge at work. Bring somebody like me in to train the HR, the safety managers, everybody in the C-suite about suicide prevention signs and symptoms. Mm-hmm. And then after I come in, bring in a team that teaches conflict resolution. So that if somebody on the floor of the plant has a beef with somebody else and is getting depressed, you notice it, you ask them if they're suicidal, and then you get them and whoever's bothering them or the person they got a grudge with into conflict resolution. And maybe you never have to use your active shooter drill skills.
Right.
And it was like I hit them with a bat. They'd never even considered that it was just mitigation, not prevention. It's a good idea. You should do that.
Right. But, just in case, that's emergency, break the glass.
Yeah, it's a break the glass. Yeah, break the glass moment. You need to go upstream, find out why the bodies are going into water in the first place.
Okay. What would you think? Why do you think? Because I saw something since 1999 up until 2019, suicide rate has gone up 33%. I think it slowed down a little bit towards the end of 2019. But what do you think you could pinpoint that has made it, drastically go up in the last 2 years?
Several things. If you track teen self-reported depression and teen suicide, thoughts of suicide with ownership of smartphones in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
In 2012, at least 50% of the people in the U.S. had a smartphone. They crossed that 50% mark. And now it's somewhere in the low 80s%. But if you track smartphone ownership, self-reported depression, self-reported thoughts of suicide for teenagers, I think that's part of the problem.
Okay.
Another thing is men tend to tie their identity to their job. And everybody thinks all the manufacturing jobs went overseas. About 15% of them did. The other 85%, you know where they went?
Where?
Robotics and AI.
Right.
So you got a middle-aged guy who high school education, but got a good job in a manufacturing plant, worked his way up to shop steward or manager, making a good middle-class living. And then the next day, because of AI and robotics, he's not. So if he's not that guy, who is he?
Right.
Not uncommon with athletes. You've been an athlete since you played Pop Warner football, and then you're blown out of the NFL. Who are you?
Right. If you didn't finish college or you didn't put much thought into what you were going to be after college, it's like, now where do I go? Especially the ones that didn't make it to the NFL and they put all their eggs in one basket in college.
What I wish they would do with scholarships, it'll never happen, but what I wish they would do is let the students play the sport and not go to class. Get into the university, academically, whatever, give them a scholarship, or they play the game. And make sure it's not just 4 one-year scholarships, because that's how they do it oftentimes. Make it a full 4-year ride, and you're playing football or basketball for Michigan State. And then when you're done with your college athletic, whatever, and you don't make it to the NFL, you have a full ride scholarship. You can go back to college or wherever and really concentrate on what it is you want to do the rest of your life. Now that you know you're not going to the NFL.
Right.
Just a thought.
I can see that working.
Yeah, but it's. I mean,
it never happened because
NCAA would no.
Gotta make it look like they're actually doing something for the student.
Let me tell you a quick story about somebody I bumped into in an airport. I was wearing a funny shirt and I came down the jetway and I saw this African American gentleman laughing at me. He was laughing at my shirt. I go, "You're laughing at my shirt, aren't you, man?" And I go, "Yeah." So we got to chatting. Now, what are you doing here? Well, my son, soccer player, probably going to go pro. Played here in the Bay Area. I came to spend some time with him, and he's probably going to go pro, unlike his old man. And I go, because I played football in high school, football in college. Second year in college, I realized it ain't gonna happen. So I thought, what do I want to do in my life? Well, he said, I decided I would study drama. So I got a degree in acting or drama, whatever, from a school in Southern California. And I said, well, how'd that work out for you? And he said, I've done pretty good as an actor. And he did look familiar. But I said to him, okay, well, have I ever seen anything that you've acted in? And he goes, Shaft. I said, you're Richard Roundtree.
Oh, wow. Dang. Perhaps you've seen the movie Shaft.
Yeah, Shaft. Richard Roundtree? Shaft? That bad mother, shut your mouth? Yeah, oh, man. But there's a guy who realized his end of his sophomore year, he was not going pro. Uh-huh. So he damn well better use that last 2 years of education to do something he wanted to do. It turned out really well, obviously. But, I mean, football, D1 football and basketball, those are full-time jobs. I mean, you're going full-time school and full-time job. And that seemed to me a lot to ask of an 18-year-old.
Yeah. Well, football, though college football, you have to go 3 years minimum. It's not, you can't go early like basketball. At least you can go 1 year and then go to the NBA. And now I think, actually, let's see. I don't know if they changed it. Yeah, you still have to go 1 year. I couldn't remember if they changed it back to you if you could just go to high school and go in. But no, you still have to go 1 year into college and just go in. Football, you have to, because it's like you have to get your man body first, pretty much. Wink, wink, get some money out of them before they go off into the NFL.
Yep.
Yeah, at least they have doing that. If some of them do take it serious, at least they can have time to build a thought of what career they might want to do if they don't make it.
Yeah. And baseball, you can go right out. You probably go out right out of junior high into baseball.
Right.
And they've got development leagues. I mean, the college football system, I think, is just a development league for the NFL and the NBA.
Farmers League, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, well, let me ask you this question. If I would give you, are you familiar with Avengers, the movies, Thanos and all that?
Which set of superheroes is that?
Thanos.
No.
Okay.
I'm a Marvel guy.
That's Marvel. That's Marvel.
That's Marvel.
Yeah.
Oh man, I was trying to look smart there for a second.
Avengers Endgame. Yeah. That was the last great one I remember. But okay, we'll switch it up then. Genies. Okay, I'm sure you're familiar with Aladdin. We'll go with that. If you had a wish, this particular genie is a cheapskate. He's only giving you one wish. He's not giving you three. But the wish he's making for you is specific. I tell you, he's a cheapskate. The wish he's going to give you, if you had your chance to change over the whole mental health system and you could implement what you wanted to put in, what would you add to change to help people who have mental health issues in America? What would you change on your own if you could with one little wish?
One wish? I would wish that there were mental health facilities in such numbers that anybody, and I'm including substance abuse disorder, people who are on drugs, that any citizen who said, look, I want to get off heroin, they would have a inpatient bed immediately and programs, and intensive therapy and then outpatient programs to follow. So, if you have an issue or you have bipolar breakdown, you go and they got an inpatient spot for you until they can get things squared away. I think, on-demand inpatient care for any sort of mental illness or substance abuse disorder.
Okay. Good wish. Good wish. Now, I tell you, it's got cheapskate genies nowadays because,
Hey, that's one big one. That's one big one, though. That's going to cost that genie a lot of money.
Yeah, hopefully he gets freed after that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you got to understand, he's probably going through mental health too, being inside of a lamp for 4,000 years.
Yeah. A little agoraphobia, maybe. They don't want to come outside.
Right. Okay. Well, okay. We hit the last part of the show where I'm going to throw 3 different words at you, and you tell me how these words make you feel. Whether good or bad, the answer is neither right or wrong.
So you just want to makes you feel good or makes me feel bad?
Yeah, if it makes you feel good, makes you feel bad, or you can give me a description of how the word makes you feel in a couple sentences. Or if one word, if it's a curse word or not, if it's dag nabbit, you want to say.
Ooh.
I'll bleep it out later, of course, or not. But just tell me how it makes you feel. So I'm going to start you off with one word at a time.
Okay.
All right. First word for you. Tell me how it makes you feel. Gift.
Gift. I feel very fortunate because I believe that I'm not broken, though I have mental illness. I was made this way, and it is both my gift and my curse.
All right. I like how you worded that. The gift and the curse, but you choose to go with the gift and using that gift for good.
Yeah, and what I like to say is, if life hands you lemonade, for goodness sakes, if life hands you lemons, make lemonade, but don't stop there. Share it.
You're not going to. Don't be a capitalist and charge people for it.
No. You have to, well, I do charge to share it, but
that's the American way. All right, yeah. Capitalistic life. All right, next word for you, life.
Robin Williams said is not for everybody. Mm-hmm. I think one of the hints he gave right before he ended his life. Life to me, I've had 2 aortic valve replacements, a double bypass, a heart attack, 3 stents. I live with major depressive disorder and chronic suicidal ideation. So, I'm living on borrowed time, and I'm upside down on the mortgage.
You got a lot done to the ticker there.
Oh yeah, well, it runs in my family, unfortunately. It's not lifestyle. My dad was born with a valve, died at 40. Mm-hmm. I had mine fixed in my late 30s.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. And because of that, I think for some people they would look at that as a detriment, but if you change your mentality at it, you're going to try to live your life to the fullest because you think you're living on borrowed time.
Yeah, and it changed your perspective when you stare the Grim Reaper in the face and the Grim Reaper blinks. And I've done that, with a number of times. Mm-hmm. And so it's sort of, I don't know, you have a more sense of finality that, hang on, this doesn't last forever, dude. We need to make the most of this while we're here.
I think I got that when I turned 30.
Oh, really?
No, everybody, when I was younger, it might happen when you were younger too. It's like, oh, you get 30, you're old. I'm like, you've been getting ready to die pretty much. I'm like, really? Like, okay. And
yeah, well, when I was a kid, the saying was in the 60s was, don't trust anybody over 30. That was the deal.
What was that about?
It was during the Vietnam War.
Uh-huh.
And the young people felt like the older people over 30 didn't understand, and they were part of the problem. And they got it. Yeah. And if any millennials listening, I'm a baby boomer. And let me just say, I'm sorry we screwed it up this bad. I would be mad at me too. By the way, speaking of lemons and lemonade, that's my second bodybuilding contest last July.
I didn't get to introduce that at the beginning of the show. I would have mentioned that. Bodybuilding expert here.
Yeah.
I would have never known.
Nobody would. I'm going to write a book someday called Look Good Naked, because when I'm dressed, nobody can tell. I'm all ripped up.
Dude, I would have never known. I would have put that in all the accolades at the beginning. That would have been the first accolade. I would have muscle man, then mental health expert.
At 65, and my goal,
Right.
Big Red, is I want to go pro. I want to get my pro card,
But
so I
shoot,
can
man, go for it.
I get sponsors and stuff. I get my pro card, especially being 65. It's above 60 is the master's class, so you're in a sort of class by yourself with older guys.
I'm trying to get that. I'm 40. I'm trying to get that rate right now, man.
Yeah, well, keto diet, intermittent fasting. I'm telling you.
Keto always sounds like to me just another word for starving, but nah, I know it's not. But that's what when I hear keto, I'm like, that means starving, pretty much.
Intermittent fasting, that's closer to starving.
Right.
I do one meal a day, usually about every 20, 24 hours.
Yeah, some of them have to wait maybe 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours before they get their first meal out today.
Yeah, the most popular is 18-6. They fast for 18 hours, eat for 6. That's the most popular fasting, and a lot of people combine it with keto because keto is high protein, low carb, so your blood sugar is not going up and down with the carbs.
With the people at 18-6, do they work like? Because you can't work a manual labor job, blue collar job, and not eat for 18 hours.
Yeah, well, 8 of those you should be asleep.
Yeah,
that counts too. And so you get, basically you eat, you go to bed, you eat at noon to 6 p, and then you don't eat again until the noon the following day. So
I'll pass on that.
I know it's weird.
All right. Oh, okay. Let's go into the last word. Your last word is tomorrow.
Can you hold on one second? I think a friend of mine's calling from a mental institution. Honest to God.
Okay, go ahead.
Frank King. Right. And thank you, Big Red. I give out my cell number to all my keynotes. I said, look, here's the deal. If you're suicidal, call the Lifeline. If you're just having a really bad day, call a crazy person. Here's my cell.
Is that the same number or is that different?
Yeah, same number.
Okay.
And people call. One young kid called and he goes, I can't believe this is your real number. I go, how bad would that karma be? If you're having a bad day, call this number. And it's fake.
Right. There's a lot of people to do that, believe it or not.
Punk it. But I said, I'll make it even worse for you. You call and you hear this, hold please. And then the on hold music for the I'm feeling really bad today line is another one bites the dust.
I thought you were going to go with Gloria Gaynor. I will survive.
I will survive. Yeah, no, I don't want to be far meaner than that.
I was shocked you answered the phone yesterday. To be honest with you, when I called, I was like, he said, hello. Wait, I was going to say, is this the secretary? I was about to say that. I was like, oh, he actually answered the phone.
Well, and it was Fayetteville. Now, if it, because it was North Carolina, because nowadays they can route phone calls through all, whatever. I thought Fayetteville. That's why I picked up.
Oh, thank you. Good.
Oh yeah.
That's why I'm gonna keep this number now.
Yes.
Well, let's go into the last word. I got one
last word.
Okay. Last word I got for you is tomorrow. How does that make you feel?
Well, there was a time, several times in my life, where I wasn't sure there would be a tomorrow. Mm-hmm. The day I put the gun in my mouth to practice, pull the hammer back. And then in 2012, when I had my heart valve replacement replaced, it's much more difficult to replace a replacement.
Right.
I'm sitting in the driveway. I'm watching the sunset. And I'm wondering, because the surgeon said 10% chance you're going to die. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, will I be back to that spot? Is this my last sunset? Will I see anything beyond tomorrow when I have surgery? Mm-hmm. And it was close. It was 11 and a half hours. That's a long time.
Yeah. Oof. And you're here to make it for tomorrow, to help make other people's tomorrow even better.
Apparently.
You got a purpose.
Yes. And that, by the way, I feel lucky that I have locked on to my purpose, and it's my passion. And I know a lot of people just have a job because it pays the bills, but I go to bed thinking about it. I wake up thinking about it. Once I decided I was just going to speak on suicide prevention and nothing else, all of a sudden things began to fall into place. You meet people that are, can help you move that forward. In the speaking business, they call that you need to pick a lane. As I pick my lane, suicide prevention speaking, and then you need to go deep, not wide. So that's why I only have 6 ideal, target market clients, rather than just to market it to everybody.
Right. Oh man, that's great stuff, man. I appreciate you, man, for coming. This has been Frank King, again, the muscle bound expert, the mental health comedian. I would say I was going to put that at the beginning. If I knew that at the beginning, I would have put that at the beginning of the show. But I appreciate you coming on the show, and I'm sure the listeners appreciate it, and hopefully they share it with someone who needs the help and will go get the help that they desperately deserve. You've been an inspiration, I'm sure, to anybody else who listens to the show, and to me as well.
Thank you.
To hear you, man.
Well, and it's possible we may have saved a life or two today, and that's not a bad day's work.
It's not. One life is better than none.
Yep, that's my goal. Save a life a day.
Is there anything you want to plug before we sign off?
Yeah, if you go to thementalhealthcomedian.com, or as we say in North Carolina, thementalhealthcomedian.com, there's a first volume of our book, Guts, Grit, and the Grind, is on an MP3, free, downloadable, just for an email address, and I narrate it. It's unabridged. It's an unabridged audio book, about 4 hours and change, on men's mental health, the Mental Mechanics Manual, for free.
For free. See, you can't beat free.
You can't beat free.
He's a capitalist, but he's giving you something for free.
That's right. Well, I'm giving it because I get your email address. So when the next book comes out.
See, you're showing your true colors. I knew it was going to come out.
Yeah, see, hey, this is a business.
Yeah, I understand that. You got to get gas money from somewhere, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You got all these shows you got to go to. All right. I appreciate you, man, for coming on the show again. And thanks to everyone who listened to the show. Another episode of Hostile Therapy. Not because you want it, but because you need it. We'll see you on the next show. Everybody have a good day.
See you guys.
All right.